Congratulations, you can count. And they say the school system's failing.
And that was all going on. And then whilst I was doing that, I don't know when I discovered it, but I think I came back and I went to Borders again, and I saw this book called The Walking Dead. And I was like, I love zombies. Like, that was one thing that got me the film. I love all the George A. Romero films. Ever since I saw the Michael Jackson music video of Thriller as a kid, zombies have scared the shit out of me. I still remember that music video was playing at a friend's house when I was like maybe 5 in England. And when all the zombies surround the girl at the end and they're going for her, it scared the crap out of me. And anything that scares the crap out of me, I love. Same with you and I. We both love Jaws to death because, I mean, I'm very petrified of sharks. You and I went to Turkey last year, and you forced me to go in the middle of the ocean, which was fucking scary because it was all murky.
I can tell you were scared because you weren't your usual self. Like, you were very short with your answers when I was asking you questions, and you were always looking around, and just constantly you looked so alert. I've never seen you so alert in my life.
Well, I just felt like you chucked me in the middle of the fucking Serengeti and said, "Watch out for lions." Like, it's awful. And even the driver in Turkey was like, "Watch out for the sharks." So
I know,
like,
what a dickhead.
Are you doing, man?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a little bit of a tangent, but I love zombies. I was like, I'm going to read this book. I fucking loved it. I was like, this is great.
Wait, hang on. I've never heard of The Walking Dead. What is that?
Oh, it's just some indie image crap that didn't really go anywhere.
Oh, that's a shame.
But I love the first however many issues that were done because it's such cartoony art. And that was another thing where I was like, I love zombies, but whoa, look at this cartoony art. This is really cool. I'm going to get into this. And that made me start thinking, I want to make a comic book about zombies, but I also love dinosaurs. So I'm going to do a comic called Dino Zombies, where it's zombie dinosaurs. What killed the dinosaurs? It was the fucking zombie apocalypse. What's going on? Global warming. The ice caps are going to melt, and the fucking zombie dinosaurs are going to rise again. Shit is dope. Okay, if I had to make it again, I love this comic, but obviously it was way too big. But well, you look like you're about to say something.
Mainly I'm smiling because one, I remember how excited you were over it, and when you shared it with me. And I was like, sounds pretty fucking metal. I mean, if you ask me, like a guy riding a velociraptor and you've got machine guns going off, and I could just see like a Metallica riff playing over it, and I'm just like, that sounds dope. And then when you showed me the first sketch, I was like, that didn't actually look anything like I imagined. Because obviously your artwork was nowhere near what it is now.
No. The artwork was terrible, and what I was doing at that time was I bought Todd McFarlane's complete run of Spider-Man, which is like 50 odd issues. It's in this huge Bible of a book, and what I would do is I'd be like, all right, I need to draw this character. Let me look up a face in this book. Okay, there's a face of Peter Parker. All right, I'm just going to change it to make it look like my character. Like I wasn't drawing from my head. I was still copying art, but that really got me into drawing again and creating my own story. And then sadly, I couldn't finish uni there anymore because I couldn't get student loans. And I had to make a huge decision. Do I stay in America and work at a Coca-Cola factory with my mates? Because at that point, I was living on their sofa. I had no job. I made no income. I had my computer, which if you went into the wardrobe of that house and opened the jackets, there was my computer, which was a TV. And I remember Red Dead Redemption came out at that time, and I was like, I was literally playing Red Dead Redemption in a wardrobe. Like, shit is dope!
Like fucking really, Harry Potter. I mean, what is going on?
But, and I remember being on a phone call with you because I was like, look, I think the parents want me to move back to England. And you're like, are you really going to do that? Like, how could you do, like, we've set up our lives here. And you must have felt bad because they had already just moved back. And you were like, well, I'm going to be the only fucking one out here, so this is not
Well, that's
great.
why, I mean, selfishly, that's why I didn't want you to go, because I obviously, not that we were really close to one another geographically, you were in another state and I was in another state, but it was just nice to know that you were in that country and that we could feasibly see one another if we wanted to. Then when everybody went back to England, it was just kind of like me twiddling my thumbs like, hello?
Well, I felt bad for, like, quote unquote leaving you there as well, but you had your life established. I was literally living in a fucking wardrobe. So
Yeah, no, I don't
I
blame you
was,
for that. If I was playing a video game in a wardrobe, I'd pack up shop too.
yeah. So I left, and then I came back. I still remember like coming back, and it was a red eye, and it was early in the morning in England. And like one of my mum's being like, "Oh, do you want a bit of toast?" I was like, "Yeah, I have a bit of toast." And then I sat on the sofa and I was like, "Oh fuck me, what the hell am I going to do in my life right now?" I was like, "I'm 20 years old, and I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Like I've moved back to a country that I haven't lived in for 13 years. Like fuck."
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I did the same thing. 17 years for me, and that moment where I went to bed that night and I laid down and I thought, what am I doing? Have I made a horrible mistake? Because I'm in a
Yeah.
place where I know no one, and the only people I do know are in this flat with me right now.
No, that's exactly how I felt. So that's why I seized that moment. I was like, I don't know. I have no distractions. So I'm just gonna work on Dino Zombies. So I knuckled down, and like our parents, if we're keeping ourselves busy, they're always happy. Like one thing that was great was our parents have always been very supportive of whatever we do, especially anything in the creative field. Like Dad's always supported me with the music, and with art, he would buy me art supplies. Like he loved because he was a photographer. But so I was working on Done Zombies. I drew like a whole issue, and I didn't know how many pages it was supposed to be. So I think the first issue was something ridiculous, like 60 pages long. Like it was long. But I still feel proud today that I finished the first issue of that comic because it's something that if you have, I had zero art skills at that point. I was buying tons of McFarlane art. I was just copying it. And it's just one of those things where you think, oh, I'm never going to be able to finish an issue of a comic book. And I did. And it was 60 pages long. So technically I finished 3 issues of it. It was just a bit dragged out. But I was working on that. And then my grandmother said to me, if you want to go to university, I'll pay for you. Because I'll just take it out of whatever I'm going to give you when I die. She always speaks like that. Our grandma's like, oh, well, when I die, you're going to get this, that, and the other. It's like, all right, well, hurry up then. No. Obviously kidding. So anyway, when I was at uni, I was focusing on film, but I was drawing Dino Zombies through that university. I would still draw panels and pages. I had my mates like help me out with some inks where they would fill in blacks and stuff. So I was still creating that comic. And then while I was at university, an opportunity rose to draw an indie book. And it was nice at the time to be offered something because I've been posting Dino Zombies online, etc., to get a different job. Except that job was, all right, we need you to pencil, ink, color, letter, do the covers, do the graphic design, send all the files off to be printed. Like I had to like if you pick up a floppy comic right now, everything you see in that book, advertisements and all, I created all of that for the first book I did. And I only got paid $300 American to do it. I worked there. Since I was working every day, I made 25 American cents an hour for a whole summer. It was rough. It was tough, but it showed that I was getting into the actual business itself. And then I was dedicated to it. And it was sort of me slowly figuring out like, well, if I was getting paid more and I was a better artist, I might enjoy this as a profession.
Right.
So I was doing that book, and then university was going on, and there was a comic shop at my university, and I was like, oh, well, I'm drawing comics. I love, I'm making Dino Zombies. I'm out of the loop of what's going on now, besides The Walking Dead. Let me see what's going on. So I walk into a comic shop. It's 2011 or 12. And on the stands is a Batman single issue that says the New 52 on it, which I have no idea what that was at the time. Issue 4, I think it is. And it's Batman on the floor and a member of the Court of Owls behind him running with his knives out. And the first thing I thought was, that looks like Todd McFarlane. And I looked it up and I was like, Greg Capullo, who the hell is that? And I bought that issue. And that's the issue, I think, where you have to turn the comic book around when you're reading it, because he's fighting the Court of Owls and all the comic turns and like really cool stuff. Anyway, I got really into that book. I remember messaging you immediately being like, hey, buddy, you like The Dark Knight Returns? Read this shit, because this shit is dope.
And I didn't, I honestly, when you told me that, I had my immediate doubt, because to me, I'm like, The Dark Knight Returns, that's untouchable. Nothing can come close to even breaching the gate of how amazing of a Batman book that is. And then I read fucking Snyder Capullo's Batman, and I was like, You know what? I'm not saying it's as good as The Dark Knight Returns, or even trying to compare to it, but damn, is it an original and amazing Batman story from start to finish. It's so good.
So that book is really important to me because, one, it got me back into reading comic books, and it was the first time in my life where I ever read what was coming out on the stands at that time, since I was reading Civil War when I was, 16 or something like that. And I also discovered Greg Capullo, which changed my life completely because I was like, who the hell is this guy? This guy is the best artwork I've ever seen in my life. Looked him up, and I was like, oh, he worked on Spawn. Oh, I love Spawn because of Todd McFarlane. Oh, he was the main artist of Spawn for 100-odd issues. Oh, shit. This is why I love him so much, because it's just finding out, like, oh, you love Paul McCartney? Well, he was in a band called the Beatles, and you know who else was in that band? John Lennon. Oh, I love both those people. Wow, the Beatles is the best band I've ever seen. So I fell in head over heels with the book Spawn, became completely obsessed with the book. It's funny today, I've still never read a fucking issue. It's just going back to my childhood where the art was so good that I was like, I'm just going to look at all this art, I'm going to study it. Again, I haven't read any of it because, to be fair, it's probably not the best read that you can buy. But the artwork is absolutely incredible for the first, and my favorite issues are like 50 to 100, like real amazing stuff. I have sitting right in front of me right now, Spawn Origins Collection Book 8, which is like my holy Bible. Anytime I feel down about myself or I need like a pick-me-up boost to work, look at that book and I'm ready to go. So I discovered that book, and then that completely changed my art style. I was really trying to draw like Greg Capullo, and I started getting other gigs where it was with other indie comics. I got to do a Batman fan comic for someone because I was.
Oh, I love that. Online. Yeah, tell the listeners about that briefly, because that was it was fun. It was right up our street, wasn't it?
It was a 10-page short. I was hired to do it from just some guy off of DeviantArt, which is a very popular art uploading website. And he's like, it's 10 pages. It's based in the Keaton universe. It's Batman, and it's the story of how the Joker poisoned the two. You know, in the bit where it's like Brand X, love that Joker, and it's the two models that have been kidnapped and they've been Jokerized.
New and improved Joker products.
Yeah. It's that. It's the side story of the Joker kidnapping those girls and stuff like that. But it was great. I was like, this is cool, and it was the first taste of being hired to work on a property that I love. I wasn't drawing an indie book. Someone was paying me to draw the Joker. And
I was back at this time, and I even was just like, oh shit, he's doing Batman. You know, I know it was indie, but I was like, he gets to get paid, even though it was minimal, and you're an indie artist. He gets to get paid to draw Batman. And I remember at that stage, I was like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and this was at the time when I just graduated, and it was now, right, what are you going to do with your life? And I did very well at university, by the way. I passed with flying colours, but you should get a job doing stuff in film, and I'd made my final film that year, and it cost me a fucking arm and a leg to make. It turned out to be awful. Funny enough, it was all about a kid that draws comic books as well, and I sort of fell out of love with just making films, because I was like, if I want to be like an indie filmmaker like Kevin Smith, I'm not willing to put all my money out on credit cards and put my life into a project, because I know how hard that is, and I just don't have the will to do that. But I was like, but I'm really enjoying this comic book stuff. And then, speaking of Kevin Smith, he had a podcast called Fat Man on Batman, which still goes on today, but it's not the way it used to be. It used to be like what we've been inspired to do with this show, hopefully, is interview people from Spider-Man, the animated series, and talk to the insights of all the business and stuff like that. I thought that was really the best part of the show.
Yeah, I agree too. I mean, I still listen to that podcast today, and I do enjoy that show for what it's become, but I still go back and I find myself listening to old episodes of that show with the interviews. Yeah,
and the two best interviews for me was I was a big follower of Kevin Smith at the time, and it popped up, Kevin Smith interviews Greg Capullo, two-parter. I was like, oh man, this is great. I'm loving his work right now. I think the issue that was just coming out was the first issue of 0 Year as I was graduating, where he dresses up as the Penguin and escapes on the blimp. And I was listening to Greg Capullo talk, who's like, at this time, I'm absolutely obsessed with his artwork. And he said, he told his life story, like kind of what I'm doing now. And then he said, well, I decided I wanted to be a comic book artist, so I started drawing every day, all day, for 2 to 3 years, and then I showed my work and I got a job. I was like, okay, that's interesting. And then the podcast after that was a 2-parter with Jim Lee. And I was like, oh, I love Jim Lee. Let's see what he's got to say and how he started. And he basically said the same thing, except Jim Lee's a fucking wizard. And he was like, I graduated and I didn't know what to do in my life, but I wanted to be a comic book artist, so I spent a summer learning how to draw all day, every day. And then I broke into Marvel. It's like, wow, it took him a fucking summer.
Yeah, and I know that obviously even back then it was difficult to break into the business. Not as hard as it is now, but a summer that is crazy short, isn't it?
Yeah, and he was like, I was drawing all day, every day, so much so that like his knuckles would bleed and he'd have back spasms and like he was completely obsessed. But it was so inspiring to hear that. And then I was like, let me just read other interviews with other comic book artists.
Did you have any back spasms from laying down too much drawing with your tablet on your stomach?
No, I only have back spasms now because I tried to shoot a basketball and I pulled my back. And ever since then, I've had back problems. That's just getting old. Anyway.
27. Man, you're really getting there.
I know, yeah. Wait until I'm 67. I think I'll just be dead. But I started looking at other people's stories. David Finch was very similar. He said, I spent 2 years, I mooched off my parents. I learned how to draw, I showed my stuff, and I got the job. So I was like, so it sounds like to me, the secret formula to breaking into comics is mooch off your parents, draw every day, all day, and then in a couple of years, you'll be good enough to show your work, and you'll break in. So I was like, that's my plan. And this was 2013. So I was like, by 2015, summer of 2015, I'm going to show my work and I'm going to break in. This is my plan. And I told this to the family and they were like, what? They're like, you just graduated university. You've done well. You can get a job. Get a fucking job. Like, get out of the house and move on. I was like, yes, but like, honestly, and I'm sure that I was super passionate about it. So this is what I really want to do. I still have my degree. Anything that happens, it's always there. If I want to play with it, I can. But please, like, I'm young. Let me focus on breaking into comics. And luckily they were super supportive. But luckily, you know, I had all these little things that kept happening where it seemed like I was going the right direction. Like, I got a job with Sony, and they were like, hey, we need someone to come into Sony London for the release of The Amazing Spider-Man 1, I think it was, or maybe, yeah, it was the first Amazing Spider-Man, and we need someone to draw all of the staff as Spider-Man characters. And they paid out of the wazoo for that. So my mom was like, great, that's a good thing you're doing. I started getting more comic book gigs with indie books. I was going to conventions. So one of the indie books I did was called The Standard, which is by a writer called John Lees, an artist called Jonathan Rector. And Jonathan Rector is a good buddy of mine, and he's doing Marvel samples right now. He's trying to break in to the business. But he was a big mentor for me as well. He taught me how to render. He's got great videos on YouTube, which you can still go and watch. And he does tons of tutorials on just drawing and how to use digital art and all of this stuff. And then there's John Lees, who's a fantastic writer, who's been very successful, who's now done work in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is really cool. But this is all, everyone's just indie at this point. Jonathan Rector needed help finishing this book, so I hopped on, and I started doing that book, and it led down different avenues. I got more exposure. I started doing other books. So I drew art from that book, and I went to London London Super Comic Con, and this is going to be the I'm going to tell you 3 times I went to this con, and I guess third time's the charm. But I met with 3 different publishers and all of this stuff. First time I went, I met with IDW, which was really exciting. I was like, oh my god, it's IDW. They do G.I. Joe, Transformers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Judge Dredd now. Like, they do cool shit. Like, I want to meet with them. And Chris Ryall was there, who is now At the time, he was editor-in-chief. I think now he's like the president of the company or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, I waited online. I put a portfolio together of pencils and inks from the Standard and all this other stuff. I met with him, and it was actually quite positive. He was like, "I like what you're doing. I think you're not there yet, but I can see talent in you. But here's my email." And he also said, well, what properties of ours do you like? And I was like, I love Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles more than anything at your company. I love G.I. Joe, and I love that you're doing Judge Dredd now. And he's like, okay, well, here's the emails for the editor of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the editor of Judge Dredd, and the editor of G.I. Joe. And I was like, what? Like, you feel like that's like a golden nugget of information to someone to be like, here's direct contact with those people.
Well, I remember when you came home and you were like Charlie when he found the golden ticket. You like fucking ran through the door, and you're like, I've got a golden ticket to IDW.
Yeah. So I was all excited, and I didn't know then what I'm going to call the game. And the game in comics is you can get as many contacts as you like, mate, but you ain't going to get a fucking gig because it just takes one person to give you a shot. And if you don't have any books under your belt that aren't, like, if they're all indie, it's going to take you a long time to finally break someone where they're like, okay, I'll give you a shot.
Yeah, and I know that you were also obviously drawing all the characters that exist under these properties to as well in your portfolio to go, look, I've done indie books and I know how to tell a story and I know how to panel and I know how to do covers, but also here's Michelangelo and here's Judge Dredd.
Oh yeah, every month I would email IDW Chris. I'd email him with like, here's a pinup of Judge Dredd. Here's a pinup of I remember I was very smart about it as well. I saw that they were coming out with a Snake Eyes book where he had joined Cobra, Snake Eyes, Agent of Cobra. I drew a cover for it immediately. I was like, look, this is my Snake Eyes. Like, I was very much paying attention to what was going on and how I could use it to my advantage to break in. I eventually got given a chance to do a sample page of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which I was freaking out about. I was like, this is amazing. I spent a fucking week drawing one page.
How long does it take you to draw a page now?
A day.
Yeah.
A fucking day. And I spent a week drawing this page over and over again. I drew that page about 7 different fucking times. Oh my god, it drove me mad.
You were asking me, you were asking anyone opinions on angles. I remember all of that. I remember that page and what it looked like, and how you drew it. I just got to ask you, because you were quite humble before when you said that you've just got to draw every day. But for listeners out there, people that are thinking about potentially going down, becoming a comic book artist, obviously you do have to draw every day, and you were lucky enough to have the parents believe in you and you can live under their roof for minimal fees. But you also did a lot of research. I know you were talking about getting books, Greg Capullo, and compendiums of his work and Spawn.
Yes.
And that's just a very brief bit. You dived in, and I know this because you did this with music as well, when you started to love all different types of music, and you would go, well, I love this song and I love the artist who sang this, but hang on a minute, this is a remake. Who did this? Oh, this person did this. Oh my god, who is this person? And then you go down that road.
That's what I did with Eric Clapton. I was like, oh, man, this is a great song. Wait, written by Muddy Waters? Who's Muddy Waters? Oh man, I love Muddy Waters.
See, there you go. And you did that with comics as well, because you went Greg Capullo, Tom McFarlane, and then you went, well, who influenced Tom McFarlane? And you went down
John
the
Byrne,
road. Yeah.
And then, all of that stuff.
And what you do that I don't, I always do research when I go into things that are important to me, but you do extensive research. You become like almost like a Wikipedia, where you go, well, if you like this, then you're going to like this, and if you like that, then it's going to actually be this that it comes from. And your bookshelf was full, and you didn't have loads of money, so the money you did get, you were putting back into research.
This was a time where Amazon, you could get used comics for like £2 or £3. Like, I was hunting for those books.
Oh, I remember we had a fucking rotating door where we lived because there was an order every delivery every 5 seconds.
Well, it's because I was like, okay, well, McFarlane, he worked on the Hulk. I need to see that, so I bought the Hulk trade, and all the John Byrne. I still have all of it on my shelf today. But yeah, I should touch on the studying. They were like, all right, they were drawing every day, all day, so I need to draw every day, all day. Like I gave up on seeing friends, fam. Like I was obsessed. Like I was like, this is what I want to do in my life, so I'm gonna get to it. And I loved it as well. So there's a book called Figure Drawing Design and Invention. I think it's the best book you could ever get on learning how to draw. It really breaks down muscles, how the body works, tensions, and all this crap. And what I would do is I would not move from another chapter until I could draw from my imagination what was in that chapter I just learned. So if there was a whole chapter on shoulders, I wasn't allowed to move forward until I had learned that chapter. And I was up till like 7 o'clock in the morning drawing this stuff over and over and over again. And not only was I studying that, but I was really studying Capullo. At this time, the trades were starting to come out of his work on Batman, and I was just figuring out. I was like, oh, okay, that's how he draws these. He does like this little tick there, and like and like all this little stuff. And I was really figuring out how to draw. Like it's not a joke. If you want to draw comics, you got to start drawing every day, all day. Because guess what? When you break into comics, you have to draw every day, all day.
Yeah,
because
that's true.
Books come out every month, and if you're dicking about, you're going to get fucking fired. And some kid that's drawing every day, all day is going to come up and replace you.
Now, when you were looking for work, what website or websites would you recommend going to in order to share your work and also look for potential people, writers in this case, to collaborate with on an indie project?
Well, I know Facebook groups are good to join. I don't know which ones in particular, but I always looked for independent artist groups on there. I always posted my stuff on DeviantArt, and I got lots of jobs through them. I don't know if it still exists, but there was a website called zwol.org, zwol.org, and it's the forums there where tons of people post like comic book artist needed for this, comic book writer looking for artists, all this crap, and Pencil Jack forums. There's a lot of good stuff out there that you could find like the base groundwork breaking in.
What would you recommend as far as tools for listeners to go out and seek in order to start drawing in the indie world and start making their way up the ladder to being a professional comic book artist?
Well, one thing I would definitely recommend is something I said to myself was I'm going to fill up a sketchpad every single month. If it's not filled up, I haven't drawn enough. And I'm not talking, this is each side of the paper as well. So get a sketchpad, buy 12 of them, dedicate yourself to it, and go, right, each one of these is going to be filled up. I still have all of these sketchpads there. I have over like 35 sketchpads full of just me learning how to draw. And it's really interesting now to go look back and be like, oh, that's when I figured out how to draw eyes. Oh, that's when I figured out how to draw toes. Like all this really cool stuff, because in order to get better at drawing, you need to fail so many times to just get that one success where you just draw an eye with a different hand stroke or something where you're like, oh shit, that's how you draw an eye. Like it just suddenly, art's weird. It just clicks that way where you can draw a foot a million fucking times, but then you suddenly decide to do a backstroke instead of a front stroke, and you're like, oh, now I can draw a foot. So yeah, definitely fill up your pad every single month.
Okay, cool.
That sounds pretty wrong. I shouldn't have put it like
Don't stop touching that
pad. Once a month, fill up your whole pad.
Okay, so, and obviously, any tablets, programs you would recommend?
I used to have a Cintiq, not a Cintiq. I used to have a Wacom tablet where you would look at your computer screen and you would draw on this tablet. Like it wasn't drawing on a screen. It was drawing on a tablet and looking at the screen. That's how I started. Wacom Bamboo, that's what it's called.
I just have this memory of you laying in that bed in that bedroom, which we can still go see today because our dad still lives there, and seeing you laying in that bed, and you look like you were linking up to the fucking Matrix. You had this wire that connected to this tablet, and this tablet covered your face because you rest it on your chest, and you looked like you were just chilling, watching something on an iPad or something, but really you were working. And then the only time we would see your face is if we would say it's dinner time, and you'd be like, okay, and you stood it down, or if someone asked you if you want something to drink. That was the only time I remember ever seeing your face. Otherwise I remember, because I moved back when you were doing all the indie stuff, and I remember just watching countless hours of Batman the Animated Series, Spider-Man the Animated Series, Batman 66, movies, everything in that bedroom. Anything that we could have on were Trailer Park Boys. I mean, all of that stuff. And that was
Yeah.
good times for us because we really got to hang out and bond again because we hadn't seen each other in some time. And obviously we were living in the States and now we were living together under the same roof again in the UK. And we hadn't done that since we were like 18 pretty much.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just have vivid memories of you being this static object in the corner. But that's obviously you know you did it. That's how you get it done. You just got to, as you said, you got to draw every fucking day.
Every day, all day. I wake up. My mum or our mum ran a dog walking business, so that's how I'd make a bit of side cash. I go out with her, walk dogs, come back, have lunch, then I would draw till 4 o'clock in the morning and go to bed. Like it was just that was my life. I was dedicated. I was like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
I've got to learn how to do it.
Absolutely.
Do you want to stop there for the part 1?
Yeah, I was just about to say, let's put a pin in that. I think that's a good place to stop as far as you learn that your creativity led you into wanting to tell stories, and those stories explored different platforms from claymation to filming and going to school to produce anywhere that you could basically get your hands on some sort of creativity in telling a story.
Yeah.
And then realize that, you know what, I kind of have a much easier, not easier time, but more creative control and feel like I can produce something more through drawing than I can through film.
The difference is that I spent a crap ton of money on my final film at university, money I didn't have. With comics, there's no budget. Like your budget is your imagination. If you want a giant robot to be shooting fire at civilians in a giant city, you just draw it. Like it's like your time is your budget.
Well said. Yeah, well said, sir. That is absolutely true. Okay, cool. Let's stop there. Next time we'll pick up with what happened with the Ninja Turtles, and then continue on there, because I know for our listeners to tease, you had DC contact you.
DC, I did samples for them.
You did an amazing
I met with Image.
Judge Dredd sample, and you met with Image as well, yeah.
Yeah, I met with Image. I had my dark year where it seemed like nothing, like it was just not going to work out. Which was 2015. I gave myself the goal of breaking in 2015. And 2015 was like the worst year of my life, and it did not work out that way.
Yeah, that's true. So, we'll pick up there, and we'll continue on once we do the part 2 of your wall crawl to Marvel. All right, so should we have a little fun and should we play villains versus villains?
Yeah.
Sacrifices must be made.
You're right on time for your funeral. We call ourselves Venom.
Alright, so for anyone new, this game is all of Spidey's rogues from the Spider-Man animated series, and Will here has to choose 2 competitors out of a list that are numbered, so he doesn't know who they are. Those competitors we're going to discuss, who go head to head in a fight, who's going to win, and eventually we're going to come down to where we're going to have a big old brawl, and it's going to get more intense, and eventually we'll have 1 versus 1 winner for the crown of the most deadliest Spider-Man villain. So let me get to the category list. Last time we had the Lizard versus Black Cat, and after going back and forth and doubting ourselves a little bit, we did decide on the Lizard after, I think, a pretty much hands-down victory with immense power in the tail and strength.
It was just the fact that I've seen him beat the crap out of Spider-Man.
Yeah, that, and obviously sharp teeth, very powerful jaw, sharp claws, and not to mention scales that are encasing his skin in a very hard shell, and also he has the ability to regrow his limbs. So I think he is going to be a pretty damn good contender.
Yeah, and he probably smells like poo as well because he lives in the sewers. So that's another level of intimidation.
So you chose numbers 1 and 33 last time, so you have the choice of 2 to 32.
Okay, I'm going to choose 15 and 9.
15 and 9. 15, the Hobgoblin.
Ooh, I love the Hobgoblin.
The legend Mark Hamill himself. And 9, oh, 9 is Dormammu.
Dormammu's in the show?
Yeah, don't you remember the Doctor Strange episodes?
Really?
Yeah.
Come to bargain.
Doctor Strange, and then there's even Iron Man and Venom and Carnage facing off.
I remember that. I don't remember Doctor Strange being in the show.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, that would be a surprise. That would be a surprise for you when we get to those episodes. Then.
I mean, Hobgoblin in the show is a trickster, and Dormammu can be tricked, as we've seen in the new Doctor Strange film with "I've Come to Bargain."
True. Well, remember this is also the animated series versions, not the versions themselves that exist outside of comics.
Now, is this a fight where it's like they have to fight each other? That's it. There's no like, could Hobgoblin do something where he blows up something that knocks Dormammu down or something like that?
Buddy, this exists within your imagination, and that's the only constraint you have.
I want Hobgoblin to win. I don't want
Okay, well
Dormammu
let's talk about this and let's see if we can convince ourselves. So Dormammu, obviously, powerful being from another universe, however, is always trapped in a bloody portal and can never ever enter this world or our Earth in the show without help from another being. In that case, what was his name? Oh, why am I blanking on his name? Who is the bloke that helps Dormammu? I should have this written down. I'm such an idiot. Oh, Baron Mordo. There we go. Yeah. Baron Mordo. So Baron Mordo is the one that helps and wants Dormammu, his master, to come back. So, let's think about this. If Dormammu is so fucking powerful, don't you think he would have figured out how to get back to this Earth himself? If he really needs help from some, like, squitty little...
Yeah, and he always gets put back as well, doesn't he?
He does. So, Hobgoblin, let's talk about this. So, if Dormammu did enter this Earth...
I think he would blow up whatever's opening the portal and send them back.
There you go. And if you remember from the show, Hobgoblin does have that very handy-dandy portal device which allows him to travel anywhere he wants. And he's also got the smart bombs, he's got the mega glider, he is a smart dude, he's a wealthy dude, he's basically an evil Batman, right? Like, he's an evil Batman. And not to mention, he knows how to infiltrate anything. I mean, he stole the Kingpin's business from him at one point. He is a proper villain, and I think he is very deadly. Now, he's human. He doesn't have any sort of goblin gas that's keeping him going, but he's also got everything else that the goblin has, and also more, I think. I think he's smarter than the Green Goblin.
I think we should knock Dormammu off the list anyway, because otherwise it seems like Dormammu could beat everybody if he was like fully exposed.
But then that's what I put him on there, because of the portal and because if there's that loophole, and if you manage to put him back into that universe, which I think Hobgoblin's a great contender because he had that device that allowed him to do that, then I think that's your ace in the hole, that's your trump card, and I think we have, and I'll ring the bell right now, a winner. It's Hobgoblin. That was a pretty easy, quick one, in my opinion. I hate to rush through it, but I think that was a hands-down victory, really, in my mind.
Yeah, I want to see Hobgoblin go to the next round. I mean, I wanted to see Black Cat go to the next round, but after discussing it, it definitely seemed like Lizard was the clear winner.
For sure, yeah, and we'll be able to mix it up. Once we eventually come to a winner, I'll think of another way that we can do something that's very similar. I think it'd also be fun to do Spidey's allies in the show as a fight, because you've got Daredevil, you've got Punisher, you've got Iron Man. Yeah, that'd be fun.
And then we'll put the villains fighting the heroes.
Oh, yeah, the champion of the villains versus the champion of the heroes.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got to make a new list for next episode. Alright, well, we're not going to do censor swip, because obviously there was no censorship to explore.
Yeah, unless you want to go back and censor all the cussing that I've been doing.
Well, we fail instantly, don't we? So let's move on to the Daily Bugle's fact of the day.
Now let's see who's under that mask.
I'm shot and you're gonna beat.
I guess it really does pay to practice shoddy journalism. Keep it up, JJ.
I have waited for this for some time.
Alright, so last time you chose number 33 again. So, and that was all about how Bob Richardson felt that season 5 was the worst and hardest season that the showrunners ever had to produce due to writers leaving, like Stan Berkowitz from Batman the Animated Series and various other writers, and it all being on John Semper Jr.'s shoulders, and it was just a big mess, according to him. However, watching that season, you can't fault that season because that has just got some amazing stuff that you remember immediately from the series. So you've got 65, as I said last time, facts. So you can't choose number 33. What number would you like to choose?
60.
Number 60. We've got John Semper Jr. wanted Peter Parker Spider-Man to be the main focus of the series. Semper pointed out that in Batman the Animated Series, you never get to spend a lot of time with Bruce Wayne, only Batman. So with this show, he wanted the opposite and really immerse the fans into Peter Parker's world.
Oh, okay.
Do you think they did a good job with that?
I think so.
I think so too, and especially, once again, delving into Season 2 the other night, and really just focusing on Peter Parker from not just I've got to balance Aunt May, I've got to balance Mary Jane, I've got to balance being the hero that I need to be and save the city, and I've got problems, but also all of the stuff that happens to Peter Parker, becoming the Man Spider, you know, dealing with Morbius, and there's Felicia and Morbius's relationship, and Peter originally liking Felicia and then losing her to Morbius, and you feel so much more for Peter Parker in those scenarios because you've lived those experiences with him, you've been with him, where, and I agree with that, where Batman, obviously it's about, I lost my parents, I'm going to go out and I'm going to wage war on crime, and I'm going to fight the supervillains, and it's going to be, you know, whatever story that they're going to tell that episode. And I love that, and don't get me wrong, I think Batman's friggin' awesome. But from that personal level that hit, I can relate far more to Peter Parker having problems and issues. Obviously, I'm not turning into a fucking Man Spider, but it could be a way of saying, hey, if you ever feel like you are an outsider and everybody else around you views you that way, that could be an insight into that. But he takes you with him in his life, so whenever you know something's going to happen or something has happened, you feel the gravity of that same situation.
Mate, Peter Parker's got a sad life. Like, it's not a fun journey.
No, he does. I mean, I would say it's just as tormented as Batman, if not more, because
I think it's more because, as we said before, Bruce Wayne is Batman first, where I think with Spider-Man it's Peter Parker, Spider-Man. He's
sharing.
Peter Parker, not Spider-Man.
Yeah, he is. I think it's both of them get to share that mantle at the same time.
And there's no changing of personality or anything like that. It's the same guy.
Yeah, it is. He's just more cocky and he gets to quit more. And also, Peter Parker still has all of his loved ones still around. I mean, yeah, Batman has Alfred and his Bat family, but it's not like my Aunt May and Mary Jane, the love of my life. So, yeah, I think that they did a really good job with that and focusing, because that's what it's like in the comics. You feel for Spider-Man, you relate to him because he's going through real problems like us, but he's also a superhero that gets to go ahead and save the city. Where Batman, he, as much as you want to be Batman, besides losing your parents and all of that, you just want to be that you want to be that badass with cool toys and lots of money. It's hard to relate to Batman in that sense, where Spider-Man, granted, I'm not going to get bitten by a radioactive spider, but I encounter all these other problems that Spider-Man does, and I see, okay, this is how he dealt with it, you know, and I could deal with it in the same way even, or maybe I did without even knowing it. So I think that really is what makes that character so great, and I think they really nailed that in that show. So I'm glad that they picked that up and made that a staple.
I agree, buddy.
So I think we're about to wrap up. Is there anything you want to touch upon before we chat about next episode?
All I know is that right now my fiancé is sending me a bunch of... I can't see what they are. It just says gift sent by... And it's by my fiancé, so I think she's trying to get my attention. you want to know what they are?
Yeah, all right, go on then.
There's one of Judge Judy tapping her wrist and tapping. There's Wrap It Up from the Chappelle Show.
So
There's
supportive.
there's one of Samuel Jackson going tick tock motherfucker, and then there's one of the coach of the New England Patriots going let's go. So yeah, I think we're about to wrap it up.
All right. Well, now the bell is tolled.
Oh, it's hilarious.
Oh, that is fantastic. You couldn't have finished on a better note. All right. Well, what we'll do is next time we will review episode 2 of Spider-Man the Animated Series, The Spider Slayer, Part 1. I love that episode. Can't wait to dive into it. Loads of puns, introductions of characters, and just a general continuation of what you saw from episode 1.
I love that episode as well.
I do too. Yeah, so I can't wait to dive into that. So we'll dive into that next time, listeners. And then hopefully we'll have some guests as well coming up. As you said and mentioned, we had a message from a particular person that was part of the show.
Yeah, and I'm sure down the line I can get some of the people I know that have worked on the actual Spider-Man books to come on too.
I think so. Yeah, definitely. All right, well, thanks for sharing. As I said, that's all we've got time for this week. Join us next time where we'll continue talking all things Spider-Man the Animated Series. Until then, I've been Alex Robson.
I've been Will Robson.
And remember, with a great podcast comes great recordability.
Blah.